The three main reasons cited by the pharmaceutical companies for the high cost of new prescription drugs do not apply to insulin. First, the high cost of development is not relevant for a drug that is more than 100 years old. Even the latest and most commonly used type of insulin is over 20 years old. Second, the pricing is not the product of a free market economy. Free market forces are clearly not operational. There is limited competition on price. The person who needs the product is not in a position to negotiate the price, and there is no relationship of price increases over time compared with overall market inflation. The price of insulin has risen inexplicably over the past 20 years at a rate far higher than the rate of inflation. One vial of Humalog, which used to cost $20 in 1999, cost $332 in 2019, reflecting a price increase of more than 1,000%. In contrast, insulin prices in other developed countries, including neighborhood Canada, have stayed the same. Insulin prices in the U.S. is the consequence of the exact opposite of a free market, extended monopoly on a life-saving product in which prices can be increased at will, taking advantage of regulatory and legal restrictions on market entry and importation. Third, the arguments that high costs are needed for continued innovation and that attempts to lower or regulate the principles will hamper innovation are not a valid excuse. There is a limited innovation when it comes to insulin. The more pressing need is affordability. This comes from pnhp.org. The price of insulin has severely increased over the past 2 decades. Although it could be a long process, there are a few solutions that can help this public issue. First, we could have a non-government or a government organization that oversees the pricing of insulin. We can also have more pharmaceutical companies make insulin, because currently the United States only has 3 companies that make insulin. And lastly, we can have more measures and laws that help diabetics who are uninsured or unable to afford insulin access to it. Having an organization specifically made to focus on the pricing of insulin would greatly lower the price of insulin. The organization would focus on the price of insulin, which would include the production, the manufacturing, and the profit that the manufacturers would make. This would prevent the price gouging of insulin in order for the pharmaceutical companies to make a huge profit. Secondly, if more pharmaceutical companies begin manufacturing insulin, the market will begin to have competition, and this would lower the price of insulin. The 3 companies that currently make insulin in the United States would be forced to lower their price to keep up with the demand and supply of insulin. With more companies making insulin, they would need to lower their prices in order to compete with them, because the more companies that make insulin, the more options consumers would have. And lastly, the making of security measures and laws to help diabetics who can't afford their monthly insulin or those who have no insurance. Although the other suggestions would help greatly with the price of insulin, and making price caps on insulin would be the most effective, with new laws and price caps, this would prevent the overpricing of insulin and leaving insulin accessible to anyone that needs it. This would help keep the insulin at a regular price and would prevent from price gouging. So, for example, in some states now, they have begun having price caps on insulin to where it is no longer acceptable for them to have insulin over $600. It usually stops at about $150. The definition of a public issue is any issue that is of mutual concern to an organization and one or more of its stakeholders. In my past few speeches, we have introduced my public issue, the effects of my public issue, and today we have talked about the solutions. We talked about how having organizations to oversee the pricing of insulin would greatly help lower the price. Having more companies make insulin would help with the market and the competition and supply and demand. And having laws to help protect diabetics who are uninsured or cannot afford their monthly insulin. This is a huge public issue, and I'm thankful for you for listening. Thanks.